Hey everyone, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And can't believe this is number 100, personal vlog number 100, and this is the segment in the playlist where this Calgary sports fan takes a break from his Calgary sports content. And speaking of that, if you want to follow along this Calgary sports fan's journey, home of the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, just make sure you hit like, subscribe. And I also have my other social media links down in the description below. And I also do personal vlogs, attempt to comedy, and I'll also share my experiences when I'm on the road or a sport event. So for personal vlog number 100, I figured that every 50 personal vlogs, what I'll do is I'll just reflect on the past 50 that I have done. So you can see personal vlog number 50 right here where I did part 1. So this is personal vlog reflections part 2. So let's just take a look back at the playlist from 51 up to 100, as let's just give you what I was thinking and reflecting on what I'll talk about, and hopefully this will be a way that maybe you'll go back to some of these videos. It's not like a sitcom where if you, let's say for example, if you watched a sitcom or TV show, if you watch season 1 and then suddenly you watch season 7, you miss the gaps in between. The beauty with my personal vlogs is it don't matter what order you watch it in. It's all various different topics that I have in my mind. So you can pick and choose what you want to watch if you're interested. So I'll start off with personal vlog number 51. And actually it was longer for me to do 51 to 100 than it was the first 50, just because as you evolve and grow on this platform and just create more content. But if you go all the way back to personal vlog number 51, well, I have to go all the way back to September 2019, because I talked about reflecting on 9/11 18 years later at that time. If you believe it or not, as we're going into 2021, that it's going to mark 20 years since 9/11. And, those two numbers put together like that, I'm referring to the dark day that happened on September 11th. 2001. So I was just reflecting on that day shortly after that, at that time, that it happened 18 years later. It's legal age for some jurisdictions right now, and it was just a very, very dark day, even someone who lives in Calgary. And how everything went on, and just looked at my emotions, and obviously I'm always going to remember 9/11, just with all the events that happened and how the world has changed. And a lot of that kind of, reminds me right now with what we're going through with COVID-19 and the pandemic. So you could go back to personal vlog 51 to talk about that. So number 52, well, this kind of goes back to all my travel experiences, that I talk about old hotels that I want to stay at, because there was one personal vlog that I talked about that I'm a sucker for old historic hotels. So I'm thinking in this one, if money was not a limiting factor, there's a lot of old historic hotels that I would love to stay at. Let's say just not too far from Calgary in the Canadian Rockies, for example, I would love to stay at the Banff Springs Hotel or the Chateau at Lake Louise. But I'm definitely a sucker for old historical hotels, and there's definitely some that I would like to talk about as well, but or like to stay in the future. But there probably might be another personal vlog where I'll talk about those more hotels I like to fantasize and like to stay at. So number 53, I talked about, well, more why I enjoy the Robson Valley area, which that's where I love to escape to get out of the big city. And Mount Robson, and Mount Robson is the tallest mountain in the Canadian Rockies, by the way, just west of Jasper. And sometimes I do dream about, could I consider Jasper home one day, or at least in the Robson Valley area. I just love that area. It's not too far from Calgary, but it feels like it takes 6.5, 7 hours to get to Valemount or McBride from Calgary. It's a 5.5 hour drive if you just do non-stop and don't stop along the way to get to Jasper. But I just love that area to get away from it all. So you can look at that one. And then this is when I kind of went through a gaming memory space. And personal vlog 54, I talked about the system that I would say the most nostalgia for is the Nintendo Entertainment System. So I talk about that in personal vlog number 54. And then 55, well, when it was the 16-bit wars, I actually talked about the Sega Genesis. I actually preferred the Sega Genesis over the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. I just felt like it was 6 of one or half a dozen the other. When it came to that, I definitely liked both consoles. So number 55, I talked about the Sega Genesis. And then number 56, I did actually talk about the Super Nintendo, where I have memories of that as well from playing on friends' consoles back in the day, and just some emulation. There were some games that I felt like I kind of missed out on as well because I was with the Sega Genesis and Sonic the Hedgehog. So that was 56. And then 57, I talked about my life and how I remember the 2010s in general. This was going into 2020. Well, we knew at the time, but I just reflected on the decade of the 2010s in that personal vlog. And then number 58 went back into gaming memories, where I talked about the PlayStation 1, the PS1, and the PSP merged together. And I have some PSP games, so I showed off some of my collection in that personal vlog. So I talked about that. That was the system that I had after the Sega Genesis, and I had a hit or miss with that system as well. And then number 59, which kind of sort of ties in with what eventually set up my Remember the Calgary series. In first vlog 59, I talked about Calgary baseball memories of all the baseball teams that Calgary had over the years, including the Cannons, the Vipers, and then we briefly had the Dogs, and then I also touched upon the Outlaws. And then just before my time, we actually had the Cardinals and Expos. So I talked about Calgary baseball memories in 59. So going up to number 60, I talked about more memories, but this time with the Grey Cup. And I touched upon my experiences so far with the National Championship with the Grey Cup. So that was personal vlog number 60. Number 61, this might be a little controversial, but I talked about that I think the carbon tax is BS and just a cash grab. Because I just say that the level of taxation, I say, doesn't go into control, carbon emissions and the environment, despite what the government likes to tell us. So I talked about that in 61. And then number 62, I talked about just New Year's resolutions in general, and don't really like to believe in it much because it just puts too much pressure on yourself to set yourself up for fail. So I tried to put another spin on that in 62. And then number 63, I went back into some game memories. This time I talked about the Game Boy and the Game Boy Advance handheld. I did briefly had both of those handhelds back in the day. And then number 64, I cleverly talked about the Nintendo 64. And I'm going to say the Nintendo Entertainment System is the system that I was most nostalgic for. Well, and I think number 2 is the Nintendo 64. And I think it's just, it's my last system I had before, I had more time to play games, and I sort of, looking back, I eventually got rid of it, but then it's like I didn't have time to play it anymore, and hopefully maybe I'll have more time to play games again in the future. And then number 65, I talked about the GameCube, because that was the console I had after I took a little break from gaming and handhelds. So the 65, I talked about the GameCube. And then number 66, I had to talk about the Wii, just the original Wii. I didn't have the Wii U, and I heard that system wasn't as good. And then number 67, I talked about the Nintendo DS and the 3DS, the handhelds, and with the more recent collections like the GameCube, the Wii, and the DS and the 3DS, I did show off what I have in my collection right now, but it's just I have no time to play it. And then number 68, I wrapped up my gaming memories. I had to look back to all my other gaming memories videos, and I talked about everything overall and what I missed. There was a bunch of titles I missed, so that's a longer one in that episode as well. And I talked about maybe the future of gaming. So that's what I talked about in that personal vlog. So there's a lot more gaming memories in this segment of personal vlogs, where I'm going from 51 up to number 100. And then number 69, I couldn't believe I had to make a kind of a rant and a video on it, but I talked about paper straws as the worst recent invention. Who would have thought, having something that transports liquids that's made out of paper would be a fail. So I talked about that in that personal vlog. And then number 70, I simply talked about who and what got me started, inspired to be on YouTube. So you can look at that one for number 70. So number 71, I talked about my feelings with high school reunions right now. How I think it's changing over time, especially with the introduction of social media. And I think given what we're going on through right now, high school reunions might also change as well with the pandemic and whenever we get back at it. Number 72, I talked about, do I want Calgary to host the Winter Olympics again, or the Olympics again in general. As, we had it in 1988, and I was very young and didn't fully appreciate the whole spectacle of the Olympics, and then Calgary tried again to potentially host the 2026 Winter Olympics, and I think if we voted yes on the go ahead with it, I think we would have had it, but I talk about that in that personal vlog. The number 73, I blame Dumbo. As I say, Dumbo is why I love elephants. And I think it's natural. You watched Dumbo a lot as a kid growing up, and Dumbo is an elephant. So hence you think Dumbo, elephant, put it together. So that's what I talk about in 73. And number 74, I talk about that I'm one of these freaks that don't have a car, and I've been carless since 2011. Talk about that in that episode, or a personal vlog, where I haven't had a car for 10 years, various reasons. A lot of it is economic and not practical, so I haven't had a car for almost 10 years. Yeah, some people look at me like, how do you do that? You don't have a car. Well, it's called taking transit, and it's not ideal, but can't afford a vehicle. So number 75, I talk about just the love-hate relationship with Canadian Tire. That just seems like a business that we all love to hate, Canadian Tire. It's a big part of the culture of Canada, but we seem to also hate on it as well. So that's 75. So number 76, I actually talk about other videos that I like to watch on this platform. I talk with the fascination with dead mall videos, and all the creators that I touch upon in that personal vlog were about what they do on making dead mall videos, and just the kind of the how to preserve digitally all the artifacts from the past, something to look back on, many years down the road. So number 77, I kind of did an opposite, where in the first 51st vlog where I talk about I think it's funny when an animal hates you, I flipped it and shared stories about it's funny when an animal just really likes you for some reason, mostly cats and dogs, so I talk about that in that personal vlog. And then 78, well, given that I made it during at the start of the global pandemic, COVID-19, I just went on for a while talking about what could change after this pandemic, and still wondering that today if we ever get there, because I still feel like that it's one thing about preserving and keeping the healthcare system not overburdened, but it's also getting too much to be the government's using it for control. And then 79 is kind of a follow-up to that, where I talked about changing mental health stigmas, that stigmas definitely need to change with mental health, especially being a guy, and how they treat for males. So that's what I talked about in 79. And then number 80, this kind of is my fascination with trains. I like trains growing up as a kid, and the commuter train is definitely not as good with in Canada compared to other parts of the world, let's say in Europe. But I talk about what's strange about Via railroads. That I live in Calgary, which is a city of over 1.2 to 1.4 million people, depending on how you count the metropolitan area. If I wanted to take the train to go across the country, I have to go up to Edmonton. But when I go to Valemont or McBride, I can catch the train on Via Rail to go to Toronto or Vancouver. But I can't do that in Calgary, which is kind of weird to look at it that way. So that's what I talk about in that personal vlog. Number 81, this kind of goes back to British Columbia. I say that British Columbia is Canada's California. I just say there's a lot of elements that's in British Columbia and California that I think if there's another marketing idea that Travel BC, and call me if you want to do it, I think they should say we're Canada's California. That's what I talk about in that personal vlog. And then 82, I just talked about the evolution of my annual spring vacation and what I like to do during usually Victoria Day long weekend. And then number 83, well, I got to talk about Alberta, and I say one thing that Alberta can say we can be proud of. I feel like it's the most diverse landscape province. That's what I talk about in personal vlog 83. Then 84, it just drives me nuts. Being that I am a sports fan, I go to a lot of sporting events. I talk about what people propose at sporting events. I definitely do not have the guts to do that if I happen to find that special someone. And I don't think I want to ask a question like that at a sporting event. So I share that and some stories about proposing at sporting events. And then number 85, I just kind of sort of ranted about that. As you get older, you start saying things like, I'm starting to get to that age, that, ... So I kind of share stories with that and find myself saying that a lot more. Number 86, I talk about my future with attending large gatherings. That kind of ties back in with COVID-19, what's going on. So I talk about that with various events and that with large gatherings. Number 87, well, given that it feels like we've been in a long, prolonged recession now with the global pandemic, I talk about that. I don't think I'll ever have economic confidence again. That's what I talk about in general with that personal log. And then number 88, I talk about experiences working from home. Another, and this is early in the game. I think if I might have to make a follow-up personal blog now that I've been doing a lot more, but I touched upon that in number 88. And then number 89, I just call this one Napping as an Adult, It Happens. Share stories about napping is different when you're an adult. Let's just sum it up that, let's say you mean to lie down for half an hour and then you wind up lying down for 6 hours. That's what an adult nap is. When I say I took an adult nap, that's exactly what I mean. So number 90, I talk about pop culture that I remember from the 1990s. Much different time back then, and some things you nostalgia and miss. So that's what I talk about in 90, clearly. Time that. And number 91, the St. Trojans are always going to be my college team. I talk about that, and I share a relic that I still have from the St. Trojans at the end of that first log, so I'll let you watch that to find out what it is. And then number 92, well, this is another flip from a topic that I talked about in the first 50 of my personal vlogs. 92, I talk about where social media can be a bad thing. I talk about the good part. I talk about the bad part in 92 for various reasons. And then number 93, I talk about what other sports I casually follow as a Calgary sports fan, but I touch on like various other teams and leagues that I casually follow as well. Then number 94, I talk about neighbors' dogs and other dog memories. You don't realize how much dogs make an impact on your life until you look back on it. And that's what I talk about in this personal blog. And then number 95, I just kind of give my feelings about Sunday. I feel like it's truly Monday Eve, so I talk about just how you feel going through Sunday in general, that it kind of sucks away a big part of your weekend. So number 96, I talk about, well, it kind of ties back when talking about sports. Again, I share my stories and I just talk about, I see more an appreciation about collecting sports jerseys, especially, let's say, if you have jerseys from the past and jerseys you want to acquire. And also I touch upon, that family joke when like I buy a jersey and I put a player's name on it and then eventually that player leaves town. I see more value with that now, with having that jersey with that player's name on it, capturing that. So I talk about that, and hopefully I'll eventually get to add more jerseys to my collection, especially now that I've been more active here as a Calgary sports fan. And then number 97, I talked about, I feel like that sports fandom is a lot like a religion, like going to a church. I touch upon many things in that episode, or that personal log. I'm tempted to say episode, personal log, it's kind of the same thing. But I think, being a sports fan, there's lots of elements to being a devoted religious person that isn't a sports fan, but you're very hardcore with your religion and going to a place of worship. I feel like there's a lot of elements that's similar to that for me that I feel I experience as a sports fan. Number 98, I recently talked about, and it's been years since I've gone to a movie. And this is beyond factoring in the global pandemic. But I talk about, could this experience be antiquated and change forever about going to a movie? So I touched on that. And then number 99, I recently talked about, do I have a favorite season? I'm talking about the 4 seasons, and I kind of tie in, what do you feel about each season during the year and as a sports fan. So that is all the personal vlogs that I have touched upon from 51 all the way up to now with number 100. And that's just the beauty that I like to have this extra thing. It's an addition to what I do in addition to my Calgary sports. I post several videos mostly during the weekend when I have time. I am trying to throw in some more videos during the week where maybe I could throw in another personal vlog, and same with attempt to comedy, which is kind of a same thing that's like I do with personal vlogs, except I actually try to be more humorous in those videos, and that's why I call it attempt to comedy, because what's comedy to you is different to me or whoever else, and that's kind of like my disclaimer. But the personal vlog is just I pick out a topic and I just touch and expand on it, just just have a more of a laid back and, got to have a variety of content beyond just Calgary sports, which is what I mostly do on the channel. And I have planned out another 50 personal vlogs, believe it or not. And I just feel every 51 or every 50th one, like number 50, 100, and then eventually if I keep going and get up to 150, then I'll do a part 3 where I'll reflect on what I touched on from 101 to 149. So that's what my personal vlog reflections part 2 that I have for this one. Can't believe I've done 100 of these. And it's just a significant milestone to touch upon. So anyways, like I say, if you like to follow along, want to follow along this Calgary sports fan's journey, home of Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, I mostly do talk Calgary sports on my YouTube channel. We don't talk, big games, recap games, talk major stories, and any other feelings, sometimes with other sports in general that would affect Calgary in some way, shape, or form. But I also do personal vlogs, which is what this one is, for example, where I just talk about anything in my mind and then touch funny, attempt a comedy, just trying to think of something and try to be as funny as possible in those. But I also do share my experiences when I'm on the road or a sport event. So if that all sounds like it'd be interesting to watch, do follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey. You know what you do, just make sure to like, subscribe. I also have my other social links down in the description below for other ways you can follow me. And, I have a generic, Facebook page for this YouTube channel where I just post any updates or plans what I want to do. And links to videos like this one, for example. And then got my Instagram, Twitter. I'm also going to slowly try to be, or have TikToks, but I would like to try to be a little more active on TikTok to be in more videos myself instead of just capturing something on the go. But that's all the different, social media platform. And, I do watch more focus on YouTube, but TikTok also. You get caught on that rabbit hole as well, watching TikToks, so I have my small part in that as well. And maybe some of the TikToks that I might make, if it's not with a song that's copyrighted, if it's just me talking, I'll probably squeeze that in the video, any future videos that I make in the future. So I just want to say thanks for watching, and you're welcome to look back at all the personal vlogs that I touched upon, reflecting part 2, and then at the beginning I mentioned the part 1 reflection for number 50, so you can see all the 100 that I've made so far in this playlist. It tells you how long I've been making videos in the last few years. So I want to say thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.